She kneels in the snow, the world around her silent, save for the buzzing trace of an unwanted memory. In her hands, a weapon still wet from its use. Above her an eye watches, not divine, not human, but something far colder, a data recorder, silent and impartial. A crime has been committed, but it is not the murder that haunts the scene, it is the collapse of identity under surveillance, the unraveling of self when memory is no longer private. This is Black Mirror's Crocodile, an episode that eschews the overt futurism of AI uprisings or digital replication for something more mundane, more insidious. There are no cyborgs or artificial intelligences here. The only machine of consequence is the one that lives inside the human mind and the technology that dares to trespass inside it. Memory, in this world, is no longer sacred. It is no longer yours. The story begins with a long-buried trauma. Mia and Rob, two young adults intoxicated and driving through the Icelandic night, strike and kill a cyclist. Their decision to hide the body becomes the seed of their undoing. Years later, Mia, now a successful architect with a family, finds her life pierced by Rob's guilty conscience. He wants to confess. She cannot let him. And so she kills again. This murder, though calculated, might have remained hidden, if not for a strange coincidence. While disposing of Rob's body, Mia witnesses an unrelated accident. A self-driving delivery vehicle hits a pedestrian. The event draws the attention of an insurance investigator named Shazia, who employs a memory-reading device called the Recaller. What begins as a routine claim check spirals into something else entirely. As Shazia's search for clarity edges closer to Mia's truth, Mia's panic curdles into paranoia. One murder leads to another, then another, and finally, horrifically, to a child. But in the end is not a person who dooms her. It is a hamster. The brilliance of Crocodile lies not in its sci-fi trappings, but in how little it relies on them. The episode asks us to consider, what happens when technology amplifies not our capabilities, but our guilt? What happens when memory is evidence, not experience? In this world, you are what you remember. And if others can see what you saw, truth is no longer internal, it's forensic. Mia is not a monster, not in the traditional sense. She is the logical conclusion of a world where risk is something to be eliminated, not endured. Her spiral is not driven by psychopathy, but by suffocating calculus, who knows who might know, and who must be silenced. Each killing is a desperate, clumsy attempt to stop the past from leaking into the present. But in a society where even pets can bear witness, forgetting is a privilege no longer guaranteed. There's a quiet horror to that proposition. That redemption is no longer spiritual, but technical. That the right to move on depends not on remorse, but on whether the evidence can be extracted. Crocodile is not about justice. It's not even about guilt. It's about the way a future obsessed with truth becomes incapable of mercy. And the question it leaves us with isn't, how could she do it, but rather, how long until someone like her is one of us? Part 2. Background and Production, English Version. The origins of Crocodile lie not in an obsession with futuristic gadgets, but in something far more primal, the terror of being unable to hide from one's past. Charlie Brooker, creator of Black Mirror, has spoken candidly about the episode's genesis as a kind of reverse science fiction. Instead of imagining what tech could do, he asked, what if it never let you forget? The core conceit began with a single anxiety, a world where every memory can be extracted and weaponized. From that seed, Brooker wrote a story not about innovation, but about fear. Fear of exposure, of being defined forever by a single terrible moment. Interestingly, the earliest draft of Crocodile centered on a male protagonist and followed a more traditional crime thriller structure. But when Australian director John Hillcoat came on board, he pushed for a radical shift, make the protagonist a woman. Not just any woman, but a professional, composed, middle-class mother. This change transformed the narrative. It wasn't just about guilt anymore. It became about the fragility of constructed identity, about how quickly an entire life can fall apart under pressure. Andrea Riseborough's performance as Mia channels that collapse with eerie precision. In an interview with The Guardian, she noted, Mia isn't a villain. She's a landslide in slow motion. She doesn't kill because she enjoys it. She kills because she's too afraid to face consequence. Choosing Iceland as the filming location was no coincidence. Brooker deliberately abandoned urban dystopias to craft a world that feels post-civilization. Empty roads, brutalist interiors, sterile landscapes. The absence of crowds makes the murders feel even more isolating. The silence, the snow, the long shadows, all reinforce the idea that technology doesn't need cities to hunt you down, it just needs data. One fascinating production detail: a late-stage scene was originally written to show Mia hesitating before killing the baby. She would break down, reconsider, almost walk away. But Hillcoat cut the moment. His reason: in a world where technology outruns empathy, even hesitation feels indulgent. This, perhaps, is the episode's most disturbing truth. Crocodile doesn't deny humanity. It merely shows how easily humanity is eclipsed when survival becomes a numbers game. In that, the episode becomes a kind of anti-redemption story. There is no learning, no reckoning. There is only escalation. The cold geometry of guilt. Hillcoat's direction and cinematographer L.O. Crawley's choices are coldly deliberate. The film's visual grammar reflects the internal disintegration of Mia's psyche. Iceland's barren whiteness acts as an emotional vacuum, pure, unsympathetic, unforgiving. Scenes are often shot with static wide-angle frames, particularly after Mia's first murder. She paces nervously, crumbling inside a sterile motel room, while the camera refuses to follow her. The message is clear: no empathy, no hand-holding. The lens is the eye of a world that records, not redeems. When Shazia uses the recaller, the editing switches between subjective memory POV and Shazia's focused, detached gaze. These transitions mirror the central premise: memory is no longer intimate, it's transferable, inspectable, audit-ready. One striking moment occurs as Shazia places the device on Mia's temple. The camera zooms in ever so slowly, simulating the sensation of being peeled open. The viewer feels complicit in the act of psychic violation. A collapse, not a descent. Mia's trajectory is not a moral fall in the classic sense. It's a layered implosion, the slow cracking of a carefully polished surface. Her first crime was buried under success and motherhood. But when that veneer is threatened, her reactions aren't strategic. They're desperate, erratic, childlike. Each of Mia's victims is not just a person, but a repository of potential exposure. Rob remembers. Shazia extracts. Her husband could suspect. The baby could someday know. She doesn't murder to destroy life, she murders to silence data. That the final witness is a hamster, an entity outside human legal expectations, is both blackly comic and thematically perfect. It's not about guilt. It's about the impossibility of erasure. In that sense, Mia isn't fighting people. She's fighting the permanence of memory. The hamster as God, Iceland as void. Mia's home is decorated in stark minimalism: white walls, gray steel, clean lines. This isn't aesthetic, it's thematic. It's a shrine to emotional suppression, a false sense of order over chaos. To spill blood in such a space is not just shocking, it's a kind of sacrilege against the illusion of composure. And then there's the hamster. The smallest, most mundane creature in the episode becomes the unblinking eye of justice. Michel Foucault's theory of panopticism feels almost literalized here. Even what seems insignificant might record, and thus might convict. Giving justice to a rodent is Black Mirror's ultimate punchline, the final insult to anthropocentrism. Even the episode title, Crocodile, speaks volumes. No actual reptile appears. But Mia, like the titular animal, is cold-blooded in instinct and weeps on cue. Her tears are not spontaneous, they're calculated performances, time for moments when no one is watching, when she believes she still controls the narrative. But technology never blinks. The narrative structure of Crocodile is deceptively simple. A woman commits one crime to cover another, falling into a spiral of irreversible decisions. But the episode's real architecture is not linear. It is recursive, designed to collapse in on itself like a snowdrift burying its own tracks. Each action Mia takes leads not outward but inward. The world doesn't expand, it closes. This constriction of space, morality, and possibility is central to how the episode weaponizes tension. Brooker structures the story as a kind of moral labyrinth. Each exit becomes a new trap. The first killing, Rob, seems almost understandable, an impulsive act of desperation. But as the murders mount, they follow a logic that feels less rational and more algorithmic. Mia becomes a human bug trapped in a loop of if/then statements. If someone might remember, then eliminate. It's not madness, it's risk assessment. In that sense, Crocodile mimics the cold logic of predictive systems, showing us how easily humans imitate machines under pressure. And that irony of a woman becoming more mechanistic than the machines around her is what elevates the horror beyond bloodshed. The autonomous pizza delivery vehicle she witnesses is more humane than she is. It stops for the injured. It signals for help. It obeys protocol. Mia, by contrast, obeys only fear. Director John Hillcoat amplifies this descent into mechanical brutality through a restrained visual style that contrasts sharply with more stylized Black Mirror episodes. Unlike USS Callister or San Junipero, there's no saturated color, no nostalgic flair. The cinematography is pale, crisp, surgical. The camera doesn't flinch, but neither does it intrude. It observes Mia as dispassionately as the recaller device does. The effect is chilling. We're not inside Mia's head, we're watching her unravel from the outside, powerless and complicit. This detached aesthetic mirrors Hillcoat's prior work in Road and The Proposition, both of which explore how moral codes dissolve in hostile environments. In Crocodile, the hostility isn't nuclear wasteland or colonial violence, it's the unbearable permanence of memory in a world without erasure. There's no wasteland but conscience. Brooker's signature is present too, though more muted. While his episodes often rely on irony or satire to deliver the punch, think The Waldo Moment or Nosedive, Crocodile is almost humorless. Its closest relative in the Black Mirror canon is White Bear, another story about cyclical punishment and moral collapse. But where White Bear reveals its justice system as a twisted amusement park, Crocodile offers no such meta-twist. There is no commentary from above. The episode ends where it begins, cold, silent, unredeemed. That ending has stirred debate among critics and academics alike. Some view Mia's final act, the murder of a baby, as excessive, even gratuitous. They argue that the episode sacrifices plausibility for shock value, pushing her arc into caricature. But others see this escalation as thematically necessary, a brutal illustration of what happens when the fear of being seen is greater than the fear of becoming a monster. In psychoanalytic terms, Crocodile is a case study in ego death. Mia begins as someone with a career, a family, a future. But with each attempt to control the past, she forfeits the self that made that future possible. She doesn't kill to protect what she has. She kills because she no longer believes she has anything to lose. The hamster doesn't just convict her legally, it convicts her existentially. A rodent has a more intact memory than she has an intact soul. Ultimately, Crocodile is not just about guilt or surveillance. It's about recursion, how fear reproduces itself, how systems trap the people who build them, how trauma is not linear but looping. Mia never escapes the accident from 15 years ago. She only replicates its logic over and over until she vanishes into it. Among all Black Mirror episodes, Crocodile may appear structurally conventional, linear, suspenseful, almost noir, but it builds its dread through psychological suffocation rather than surprise. The terror doesn't come from plot twists, but from the slow, relentless closure of moral escape hatches. Unlike many Black Mirror episodes that play with fractured timelines, unreliable narrators, or dual perspectives, Crocodile is brutally linear. It unfolds like a Greek tragedy, inevitable and unrelenting. Each act of violence follows another, tighter and closer, with less hesitation. This design is intentional. Director John Hillcoat, known for bleak moral landscapes in The Road and Lawless, specializes in stories where characters see their doom coming, but are powerless to stop it. He doesn't offer release. The viewer becomes complicit, helplessly watching as Mia's logic contorts into monstrosity. Interestingly, the story gains horror not from twist, but from lack thereof. There is no redemption, no clever escape. The dread lies in how obvious each next murder becomes, and how impossible it is to prevent. Hillcoat brings his visual sensibility to bear in stark, chilling ways. Environment as emotional prison, the Icelandic landscape is not just beautiful, it is existential. Its vastness mirrors Mia's increasing psychological isolation. Cold-tone cinematography. Cinematographer Gustav Danielsson deploys an icy blue-gray palette, muting color to match moral deadness. Minimalist emotional performance. Mia rarely cries, screams, or argues. Her breakdowns are internalized. The absence of outburst intensifies dread. It makes the violence seem procedural, calculated. Hillcoat also resists sentimentality. He cuts away from emotional crescendo, avoiding music swells or dramatic framing. The audience is denied catharsis. That's the point. In this world, feeling is irrelevant to consequence. While the episode garnered praise for its craftsmanship, critics and scholars remain divided over its moral architecture. Film theorist Martin Roberts decries it as an example of ethical nihilism, a work that leaves no room for remorse, growth, or redemption, and risks numbing audiences to despair. A research group at Oxford's Institute for Ethics in AI argues otherwise, that Crocodile presents a world where ethics are no longer human constructs, but technical derivatives, the prelude to algorithmic judgment societies. Feminist media scholar Catherine Holland raises concerns over the gendered implications. Mia's arc, she warns, might reinforce the trope of female fragility in tech-dominant worlds. She cautions viewers not to see Mia as a monstrous mother, but as a character trapped in a technologically compressed moral collapse. Crocodile emerges not just as a chilling thriller, but as an aesthetic expression of entropy, a moral system collapsing under the weight of precision and fear. In Crocodile, the moral collapse we witness is not purely technological, it is deeply sociological. Mia's descent is a case study in how fear, status anxiety, and emotional repression can mutate into calculated violence when institutions silently demand perfection from individuals, especially women. The tragedy begins not with the recaller device, but with an internalized terror of being exposed. Mia's actions stem from the belief that her constructed life, a successful career, a nuclear family, a stable reputation, is so fragile that a single past mistake could annihilate it. This is not the fear of punishment, it's the fear of social death. Her escalating violence is the price of maintaining that illusion. In this sense, Mia embodies what Michel Foucault describes as the disciplined subject. Her morality is governed not by an inner compass, but by a panoptic society where surveillance is internalized. The recaller isn't an evil tool, it's a mirror that reflects what a person is willing to do to avoid being seen. The fact that the device is wielded by an insurance company, not the police, speaks volumes. Authority is no longer centralized. Power is now embedded in every mundane corner of our lives. Bureaucracies wield more influence over our fates than courts. The show's Icelandic backdrop reinforces this. Wide, empty landscapes symbolizing social isolation, emotional numbness, and a kind of existential detachment. In this icy vacuum, guilt and paranoia flourish unchecked as the frigid setting reflects Mia's emotional sterility. Another essential subtext is gender. Mia's character subverts traditional expectations of femininity. She's not fragile, not submissive. She is competent, rational, decisive, and terrifyingly capable of killing. This isn't a caricature of the mad woman, it's a grim deconstruction of the emotional burdens placed on modern women. Mia isn't evil, she's exhausted by a culture that demands she be flawless. The cracks begin to show when that perfection is threatened. This duality reflects psychoanalytic tensions too. Freudian guilt, Jungian shadows, and the suppression of one's past are all at play. Mia represses her original trauma so deeply that it leaks out in the form of rationalized slaughter. The more she tries to delete her past, the more control she loses. Like the crocodile, silent until it strikes, Mia's horror lies in what is hidden beneath the surface. In a broader critique of neoliberal capitalism, the episode also exposes how the myth of meritocracy turns individuals into hyper-efficient image managers. Mia doesn't kill for gain, she kills to preserve. That's what makes it terrifying, not greed, but the fear of loss. The fear of slipping out of the winner's bracket. In the end, it's not the recaller that destroys her, it's the societal conditioning that convinced her any deviation from perfection equals ruin. The hamster's final memory might be the plot twist, but Mia's real prison was built long before. One lie, one mask, one cold decision at a time. Among all Black Mirror episodes, Crocodile arguably strikes the rawest nerve, not because of its body count, but because of how chillingly plausible it makes the descent into violence seem. What begins as a deeply private mistake ends as a societal indictment, implicating technology, corporate policy, and legal institutions alike. One of the most polarizing entries in the series, the episode split audiences clean down the middle. Some reviewers condemned it as needlessly grim and emotionally exploitative, while others lauded it as a piercing allegory of the surveillance age, where even your thoughts, your memories, your very guilt are no longer yours to keep. What resonated most wasn't Mia's spree itself, but the impersonal force pushing her into that corner, the recaller. A device designed for insurance verification ends up weaponizing privacy. In the name of justifiable investigation, it coerces compliance from civilians. It represents what scholars now call institutionalized epistemic extraction, the systemic mining of human cognition for commercial or procedural ends. Mia's unraveling isn't due to inherent malice. She's not the classic villain. She's a cautionary cipher for what happens when moral autonomy is hemmed in by legal logic and digital omniscience. In a world where thoughts are no longer safe, where every look, sound, and gesture is extractable, paranoia becomes survival. And in a moment that epitomizes the show's dark humor, it's not human diligence, but a guinea pig's memory that finally exposes Mia. This absurdist twist isn't just satirical, it's prophetic. When even animals are caught in data surveillance loops, it signals that we've crossed a threshold, total surveillance. Legally, Crocodile dares us to ask, where does responsibility begin and end? Is it the tech's fault, the user's fault, or the law's fault? The show doesn't offer answers. Instead, it drags the viewer into a brutal ethical gray zone. That ambiguity rippled outward. After the episode's release, The Guardian and Wired ran essays on cognitive liberty and the moral perils of memory-based justice systems. Academic institutions from MIT to the London School of Economics added it to bioethics coursework, highlighting its warnings about intrusive neurotech. Even its subtitle, metaphorically speaking, could be Crocodile, or How We Normalize Tyranny, One Justification at a Time. The show's biggest feat lies not in its gore, but in its implication. That technology doesn't destroy morality, it tests it. And when the test is hard enough, almost anyone can fail. So, if you had a secret, a memory, a crime that haunted you, and someone came knocking with a sensor, what would you do? Would you become the next Mia? Crocodile pushes the boundaries of what speculative fiction can do, not just to challenge our technological optimism, but to dissect our social contract under the cold light of surveillance and trauma. This episode's psychological horror extends far beyond Mia's personal descent. It exposes systemic fragility, audience hypocrisy, and the dark feedback loop between accountability and authoritarianism. Who suffers most? The illusion of middle-class immunity. Mia, with her architectural career, handsome husband, and pristine home, is Black Mirror's embodiment of the liberal success story. Yet when threatened, her fall is brutal and swift, unraveling the myth that affluence and civility are immune to regression. Her trajectory reflects a disturbing truth: the more you have, the more you'll kill to protect it. Meanwhile, Shazia represents another vulnerable demographic, a South Asian professional embedded in a supposedly progressive system. She's warm, empathetic, and ethical, but the same system that empowers her investigative tools also makes her complicit in others' demise. Crocodile dismantles the illusion that justice tech is blind to class and race. Why did the audience split so sharply? Viewer reception was intensely divided. Many critics and fans on Reddit and Twitter condemned the baby murder scene as gratuitous, even exploitative. Others defended it as an unflinching portrayal of moral collapse. This polarity stems from the episode's refusal to offer catharsis. There are no saviors, no confessions, no restorative justice. Black Mirror here acts like a moral MRI, exposing neural lesions without offering anesthetic. It hurts to watch because it forces us to imagine ourselves in Mia's shoes. Assigning blame, technology, institutions, or individuals. The most chilling irony in Crocodile is that Mia's crimes are not uncovered by human intelligence, but by a guinea pig's memory, tech as the final impartial witness. Does this absolve society of its own complicity? Shazia's use of the recaller is lawful, even procedural, but also invasive. Mia's fear isn't irrational. It's amplified by a system that can pry open her mind and project her sins onto a screen. So who is guilty? The killer? The tech? The bureaucracy that enabled both? The end of moral boundaries. The show's ethical daring peaks when Mia murders an infant, not out of sadism, but pragmatic necessity. This isn't just a plot twist, it's a philosophical nuke. If our tools can force decisions this monstrous under the illusion of control, then our systems are only as humane as our most desperate users. Crocodile doesn't argue against technology. It warns us that tech without ethical governance becomes a scalpel in the hands of a trembling paranoiac. And like the recaller, it leaves us with a haunting image, a society where privacy is dead, truth is subjective, and survival is soaked in blood. What if your memory was no longer yours? Welcome to a future that has already begun. In Black Mirror's Crocodile, the memory extraction device known as the recaller isn't just a plot device, it's a prophecy. Behind its chilling narrative lies a sober question. When surveillance penetrates not just our streets, but our minds, what remains of freedom? Memory-reading technologies are closer than we think. In 2024, researchers at the University of Kyoto reconstructed rough video sequences directly from brain scans using deep learning models. Simultaneously, Elon Musk's Neuralink made headlines for brain-machine interface trials that decode electrical signals into digital outputs. Add this to fMRI pattern mapping by MIT, and you have a primitive recaller in the making. What was once fiction now bleeds into bioengineering labs, and the line is vanishing. The death of psychological privacy. In Crocodile, Mia's downfall is triggered not by physical witnesses, but by access to her internal thoughts. Real-world legal debates are already grappling with digital evidence boundaries. Can thought be subpoenaed if it's digitized? In 2023, Google faced legal scrutiny for using user search data in predictive law enforcement algorithms, sparking global privacy outcries. This foreshadows a bleak horizon, where even mental states become forensic assets, not private sanctuaries. Technology as trigger, not just tool. Shazia's recaller wasn't meant to destroy lives, but it did. Just like AI algorithms in crime forecasting, intent often gets overridden by effect. From Chicago's heat list racial profiling fiasco to China's social credit systems, we already see the dystopian promise of data-driven justice unraveling. The lesson is simple. No technology is neutral once deployed in real-world systems riddled with bias, power imbalance, or fear. Memory as weapon, no room for redemption. The recaller allows no space for forgetting or forgiveness. Every glimpse becomes a trap, every secret a liability. Mia kills not because she is evil, but because she lives in a world where the only protection is erasure of witnesses, of data, of the past. In our era of cloud archives, blockchain permanence, and digital footprints, Crocodile warns us, when forgetting is impossible, so is healing. Even animals become surveillance node. That final twist, solving the case through a guinea pig's recorded memory, might sound absurd. But consider this. Smart collars are now tracking pets' biometric data, and AI algorithms analyze animal movements for livestock optimization. Once sensors are normalized across species, even creatures can become passive snitches in the surveillance chain. This isn't paranoia. It's precedent. Crocodile once appeared as speculative dystopia. Yet today, it reads more like forensic prophecy. Recent developments in neuroimaging have begun approximating what Recaller imagined. Japanese scientists at Osaka University recreated images from human thoughts via AI-interpreted fMRI data in 2023. Facebook's now abandoned silent speech project aimed to decode thoughts directly from brain signals. Combine this with mass-scale digital tracking, our smartphones, Google Histories, and Ring cameras, you get a world where forgetting becomes obsolete. As in Crocodile, we risk becoming prisoners of permanent recall. The core horror of Mia's descent is not murder, it's the impossibility of being forgotten. The European GDPR enshrines a right to be forgotten, but few outside the EU enjoy this. In the US, old misdemeanors, viral posts, or college mistakes can haunt employment, insurance, or immigration outcomes. Crocodile warns that when deletion becomes illegal and amnesia impossible, violence becomes the last refuge for guilt. The episode also reflects profound psychological destabilization. Goffman's theory of the backstage self argues people require private cognitive spaces to function. Crocodile portrays technology as annihilating that space. Mia collapses not due to legal pressure, but because her mind no longer belongs solely to her. It raises a deeper question. Is it ethical or even humanly sustainable to strip someone of all internal privacy? The absurdity of a guinea pig solving the crime isn't a cheap twist, it's a thematic gut punch. No matter how meticulously one manipulates witnesses or timelines, the system always contains randomness. A pet, a faulty recall, a stray reflection. This echoes contemporary surveillance regimes where CCTV, AIs, or bystanders become agents of state memory, not justice. The elite, as Mia's character suggests, will go to unimaginable lengths to suppress past misdeeds, but in an interconnected world, one stray node can bring it all down. Despite not enjoying the meme virality of San Junipero or the fanfare of USS Callister, Crocodile embedded itself in deeper cultural sediments. On Reddit's r/Black Mirror thread, users coined the term Detective Hamster as a recurring meme to mock the absurdist twist that a guinea pig memory closed the case, a darkly comic highlight that lives on in meme culture. On TV, multiple shows have alluded to or borrowed from its premise. An episode of Law and Order, SVU in 2020 borrowed the idea of a neural recollection scanner in a PTSD case, questioning whether trauma-altered memory counts as legal truth. Independent sci-fi short films on YouTube have dramatized memory as testimony, devices inspired directly by the recaller. In academia, Crocodile is regularly cited in legal tech, neuroscience ethics, and digital justice curricula. A 2021 Oxford Ethics Symposium titled Justice and Subjective Memory used it as the primary case study. Columbia University referenced it in their digital governance lecture series, calling it a radical dramatization of human subjectivity turned into forensic weaponry. Crocodile has inspired an unusual volume of academic and artistic engagement. Cited in Stanford's Digital Ethics Curriculum for Case Study on Cognitive Liberty. Nerdwriter's YouTube essay When Justice is Surveillance garners 800K views and cross-platform debate. Reddit's thread Can Pets Be Witnesses? Trended across r/legal advice and r/Black Mirror simultaneously. Artworks like The Last Witness is a Pet in Privacy as Extinction emerged as fan responses to the episode's absurd realism. Film and TV recommendations. Paycheck 2003. A man wakes with his memory wiped after building a top-secret machine. What unfolds is a trail of breadcrumbs planted by his past self. The paranoia and memory loops echo Crocodile's dark causality. The Final Cut, 2004. Robin Williams plays a memory editor of the dead. He discovers hidden crimes in their visual logs. It mirrors Crocodile's emotional tension and forensic techno-suspense. Person of interest. An AI observes and interprets people's behavior to predict crimes, blurring the line between surveillance and moral judgment, a conceptual sibling to Recaller. The Capture BBC series explores government's use of deepfake visual forensics. Even video footage may be manufactured. It interrogates the core assumption in Crocodile: if memory is law, who edits the memory? Book recommendations. Memory's Ghost, Philip J. Hiltz. A psychological and philosophical journey into the unreliability of memory. The perfect companion to understand Crocodile's premise that trauma distorts not just memory, but morality. I Am Legend, Richard Matheson. The protagonist's descent into paranoia and isolation parallels Mia's unraveling psyche, casting murder not as malevolence, but as desperate survivalism. 1984, George Orwell. Memory manipulation and enforced forgetting form the regime's backbone. Crocodile echoes its warning. In a society where memory is controlled, justice becomes impossible. I didn't want to. I just had to. Mia whispers these words to Shazia before silencing her forever. Stripped from its immediate context, the line becomes something darker, more universal. The most terrifying violence doesn't always come from hatred. It often comes from fear. Once we relied on time to dull memory, to give us the space to grow, to be forgiven, to begin again. But in the world of Black Mirror, memory is evidence. Technology is judge and jury. And humanity gets stripped away by data, cold, precise, permanent. The scariest part? This isn't science fiction anymore. It's the world we're rapidly building. You can delete posts. You can sign out. You can turn off location. But you can't delete what someone else remembers about you, especially when memory becomes a searchable file. In this new reality, remorse doesn't matter. Redemption can't save you. Your only hope is that you were never seen at all. If the horror of Crocodile lies in how far someone will go to hide their guilt, then its real terror is this. We now live in a world that no longer allows you to make a mistake, and certainly doesn't allow you to be forgotten. And in Crocodile, the line between guilt and innocence, good and evil, isn't drawn by intention anymore, but by visibility. In a future where memory is extractable and privacy overwritten by devices, the right to redemption may still exist. But the right to be forgotten? That's gone. Every moment, every mistake, every impulse, recorded, retrieved, judged. Regardless of change. Regardless of remorse. Which leaves us asking, if Rob had confessed on his own instead of confronting Mia, would her life have unraveled? If Mia had surrendered after the first kill, could she have saved her family? If Shazia's memory device couldn't extract data from non-human animals, would it still be deemed ethical? Practical? The point of Crocodile isn't to paint Mia as a cold-blooded monster. It's to show how quickly anyone, given the wrong pressure, the wrong moment, can spiral. It's not a horror story about her. It's a warning about us. Bonus details. In early drafts, the hamster wasn't the final nail in Mia's fate. It was a baby monitor camera. But director John Hillcoat pushed for a darker, more absurd ending. He explained, "We wanted to suggest that even if you kill every human witness, the world is still watching, cold, indifferent, and utterly unforgiving." Another deleted scene featured a flashback to the original hit and run as Mia prepared to take the stage at her event, a visual echo of her guilt bleeding through. The team cut it to preserve the sense of real-time collapse where memory is a nostalgia. It's a trap you can't escape. Engage the audience. Drop a single emoji to describe your emotional state after watching Crocodile. And tell us, would you support Recall or Tech if it became real? Why or why not?